Good morning, and I'm thankful that you chose to join us here at the Greenbrier Church Online. I was told a preacher story once, which means it's probably not true, but it's a story about a congregation that was looking for their next minister. They received a bunch of resumes, they put a committee together to check references, and they narrowed their list down to two men. They invited both of those men to come and to spend a weekend to get to know the church family, to let the church family know them, but they had a very unique request. They wanted both men to come, and when they preached, they wanted them to preach a sermon on hell. Both the men thought that was a really peculiar and interesting way to have an introduction sermon, but they both agreed and scheduled a weekend for their visit. The first man showed up and he was very polished. He was friendly and outgoing. His sermon was exactly 22 minutes long. His points flowed from one point to the other, and it ended in a very impressive flourish. The second man arrived and he was younger. He wasn't as polished. He wasn't as outgoing. His sermon seemed to get off course a little here and there. And instead of reaching a climactic ending, it just kind of, ended. That young man went home thinking that it was all a disaster. The congregation talked about it and they made the decision to offer the job to the second candidate. So one of the shepherds called him and invited him to come and to join that church family in their work. The young man accepted the offer, but he asked a question. He said, after such a disastrous weekend, why would you invite me to come and to join you in the work instead of the other man? The shepherd replied, it was really a simple decision. You see, when the first man preached on people going to hell, he seemed to be, almost glad about it. But when you preached on people going to hell, we could tell it broke your heart. I grew up in church families that had a very healthy understanding about hell. I was taught that hell was not only a reality, it was a place created by God for Satan and for the people who chose to spend their eternity there. I was taught that hell is a place of great suffering and shame and pain. I was told that God not only created us with the ability to love Him, He gave us the ability to choose to love Him. God doesn't force our hand. He gives us the ability to choose whether we want to love Him with all of our hearts, our minds, our souls, our body, our strength, or if we just want to love ourselves. One of the main reasons that I was taught to share my faith is because I believe in the reality of hell. The Bible talks plainly about heaven and hell. Jesus teaches us that there's going to be a time when we're going to leave this world and we will enter either into eternal life or eternal punishment. If we truly believe that God is who He claims to be and that He offers us mercy, grace, forgiveness, and that He will keep people from facing the eternal consequences of their sin by His grace, why would we not want to share that good news? Any person who has truly experienced the love of God in their lives can't help but share their hope and peace with others. To do anything less would be considered hate. A few years ago, there was a video making its rounds on YouTube. Penn Jillette is one half of the comedy duo Penn and Teller, and if you're familiar with them, Penn's the guy that talks. He used to post a video blog entitled Penn Says, where he would talk about his life, share his unique perspective. He's a brilliant man, he's well-spoken, and he's extremely honest about the struggle that he has with God and any higher being. He doesn't hide the fact that he's an atheist, and that's why this particular video blog was so popular. In the video, he tells a story about a meeting that he had with a man after one of their shows in Vegas. During the conversation, the man gave him a gift, which turned out to be a small New Testament, and inside, the man had written a note and provided his phone number and an email address so that Penn could keep in touch with him, and maybe the man could answer some questions for him. Penn talks about this man's attempt to proselytize him or to share his faith. And I really believe that we can learn something this morning from Penn Jillette. So I want to take a break to show you a small part of the video, a part that resonates with what I believe that we're talking about today.
And I've always said, that I don't respect people who don't proselytize. I don't respect that at all. If you believe that there's a heaven and hell and people could be going to hell or not getting eternal life or whatever, and you think that, it's not really worth telling them this because it would make it socially awkward. And atheists who think that people shouldn't proselytize, just leave me alone, keep your religion to yourself. How much do you have to hate somebody to not proselytize? How much do you have to hate somebody to believe that everlasting life is possible and not tell them that? I mean, if I believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that a truck was coming at you and you didn't believe it, that truck was bearing down on you, there's a certain point where I tackle you. And this is more important than that. And I've always thought that, and I've written about that, and I've thought of it conceptually. This guy was a really good guy. He was polite and honest and sane, and he cared enough about me to proselytize and give me a
If you
Bible.
want to know what people really think about the church or about Christians, all you have to do is listen. The words of a man who is well thought, well spoken, and doesn't believe in Jehovah or any type of God haunt me. If you believe in heaven or hell and that people could be going to hell or not getting eternal life, how much do you have to hate somebody not to proselytize? How much do you have to hate someone to believe that everlasting life is possible and then not tell them that? You probably wouldn't say that you hate anybody, but I think we need to take a moment to consider what this man's saying. Is it possible that we're displaying hate by refusing to share the gospel with folks? Over the past few weeks, I've been trying to impress on you that church growth needs to be more than just something we talk about at church. We can talk all we want to about heaven and hell, but unless we really believe in those places, we're not going to be bothered with this idea of growth. Until we actually believe in the reality of eternity, we're going to spend our time making excuses instead of making disciples. I'll readily admit that sharing your faith is difficult and oftentimes scary. I know firsthand how easy it is to allow the fear in our hearts to cloud our desire to share our faith. Every week we've looked at different reasons that people have for not wanting the church to grow. It doesn't matter if we're outright afraid of them or if we're just afraid that they're going to come in and mess up our church. The truth is that today, just like 2,000 years ago, the fear was and is very real and very much the same. I wonder sometimes if part of our struggle comes from how we read the Bible. You see, the book of Acts is inspiring and disheartening at the same time. In the book of Acts, it seems that every time somebody talks about Jesus, there's a conversion. Every talk that begins with Jesus ends in baptism. And those conversions happen quickly, kind of like a bee sting. Somebody hears about Jesus and immediately they give their lives back to God. Preach a sermon, 3,000 people are baptized. It's a wonderful account of an amazing day. But that's never been my experience. I've never told somebody about Jesus and how my life is better living in his kingdom, and immediately they want to give their lives to Christ. I've been preaching for over 21 years. I've never had somebody interrupt my sermon to give their life to Christ, much less 3,000 people. So I'm often left to wonder, am I doing this whole evangelism thing wrong? If I'm not getting the same results we read about in the book of Acts, it would probably be better just to leave it to the folks who are gifted to evangelize or to people who are paid to evangelize. And as the years roll by, it becomes easier just not to say anything at all. I'm pretty sure that you also know the struggle of trying to talk with people that aren't open to the gospel. We know the effort that it takes to step out of our comfort zone to talk to people about Jesus and his power to save them from themselves. You know people who've been hurt by religious broken folks, people that seem angry about everything. You know people that believe that God is nothing more than a fairy tale. You know people who refuse to look and to see God. And some of you know how disheartening it is to try to share your hope only to be met with, well, I don't believe that, or I'm not interested in that, or worse. That's why I believe that while we want the church to grow, we want it to grow like it did in the book of Acts, immediately. And we just want to leave out the people that aren't immediately open to the gospel. Jesus understood that there are going to be people who are not in a place where they can receive his love and his offer of salvation. If you pay attention, you'll notice that he talks about the possibility of people not being receptive to the gospel. You might notice in the parable of the sower, the first ground that Jesus describes was hard pathway ground. He goes on to explain that there are some who hear the message about the kingdom and they don't understand it. They can't receive it. And then there's that encounter that Jesus has with the rich young ruler in Mark chapter 10. As Jesus started on his way, a man ran up to him and fell on his knees before him. "Good teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus answered. "No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not give false testimony. Do not defraud. Honor your father and mother." "Teacher," he declared, "all these things I've kept since I was a boy." Jesus looked at him and loved him. "One thing you lack," he said. "Go sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." At this, the man's face fell. He went away sad because he had great wealth. Jesus was very approachable, and he could often be found healing people, forgiving people, teaching people. You might think that everybody left Jesus in a better place, but that wasn't always the case. In this text, we find a young man who approaches Jesus and is now on his knees out of a show of respect. I believe that he honestly wanted to know, what do I have to do to find eternal life? I believe he honestly wants to be a follower of Jesus, part of Jesus' disciple group. The young man truly believes that Jesus has the words of life. You see, following Jesus is a gift of real freedom. When you give your life completely to Christ, you're free from the pressure and the responsibility of worrying about what other people think about you. You're free from your doubt and your fear about what the future holds because you know that the end of this world is not the end. You're free to follow our Messiah who possesses that indescribable something that we all secretly desire. Yet on the other hand, there's so much that we have to give up to follow Christ. Is this young man willing to give up the things that the world has to offer now for his future glory? Is he willing to miss the parties, the extravagant clothing, and the lifestyle that consume his life, that make up his reputation? Is he willing to love God and his neighbor more than he loves his own comfort and pleasure? Is he willing to find his worth in his relationship with God? Unfortunately, Mark says that he left upset because he was rich. I mean, he had a lot of possessions. He had a family to think about. He owned businesses. He had employees and servants that he had to care for. He had clout. He had position. Actually, what he had was an awful lot of excuses. When you make the decision that you, your time, your family, your job, your position, your reputation are more important than your relationship with God, then any excuse will do. You can make enough excuses, come up with enough reasons to soothe your own conscience. But the truth is, you had the opportunity to choose God or to choose yourself, and you made the wrong choice. Children of God know that being a Christian is so much more than just a one-time choice. It's a continual choosing. It's not just once a day. There are a lot of times in the day that we have to choose who and what we're going to worship. Do we worship God or do we worship our spouse? Do we worship God or do we worship food? Do we worship pleasure, our career, our free time, our hobbies, our brokenness? Do we worship what other people think about us? You see, there are a lot of choices, and the truth is that sometimes we face the choice to choose God and we turn and walk away. Some people walk away forever. Some people just need another opportunity because they're not at a place where they can receive God yet. It's easy to forget that Jesus' mission here on earth was to bring salvation, not condemnation. Some people aren't ready to give up the things of the world yet. There are even people who sit in a building once or twice a week and they've not completely bought into the relationship that God's offering them. Yet no matter how many times we say no to God, He still offers His love and forgiveness. As long as we have breath in our lungs, God gives us the chance to come to repentance. Nobody has ever gone too far. No one has ever sinned too much, made that many wrong decisions that God will refuse to offer them forgiveness. Our job is to show with our lives how attractive God's offer truly is. You see, most people's conversion is not that bee sting type of conversion. Most people don't hear about the love of Jesus once and change everything in their lives. For most people, conversion is more like the opening of a flower. Just like it takes a lot of sunshine and water and nutrients to get a flower to grow and to bloom, it's going to take a lot of love and mercy and grace for a soul to fully come to Jesus. That's why I'm grateful that Peter describes God's patience. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. I believe that our biggest struggle with evangelism is that we are trying to introduce people to a church or a preacher instead of introducing them to our Savior. We want to get them to change a pattern of behavior instead of introducing them to Jesus and allowing Him to do the work of restoration. Or maybe our struggle is that God's just too good. In that beautiful parable of the vineyard workers found in Matthew 20, we see that Jesus says that God's kingdom is like a man who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyards. They agree on a wage and they immediately go to work. But 5 different times the landowner has to go back out looking for workers. And at the end of the day, he instructs his foreman to call all of the workers and to pay them their wages. Start with the last one hired and then go to the first. Those hired last received the same wage as the folks that worked all day, which made those guys angry. And while I love the landowner's words, I really struggle with them. In verse 13, the landowner says, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me, or do you begrudge my generosity?" There's this idea that those of us who were immediately receptive to the gospel deserve more grace, more heaven, more reward than those who weren't as quick to believe. There's this idea that someone who's been a Christian far less time than I have shouldn't get the same reward that I get. I had a friend tell me one time that while we all might get to heaven, some of us are going to stand closer to God's throne than others. And honestly, that is a horrible theology. You see, God doesn't have stepsons. God doesn't have stepdaughters. God welcomes everyone into a deep, abiding, equal relationship with Him. God sent His Son Jesus into the world to be a sacrifice for everyone's sin, no matter when they come to Him. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through Him." Whoever is willing to hear and believe is invited to join us at the table this morning. Whoever is willing to hear and believe is welcome into a full relationship with our God and our Savior. As we gather at the table this morning, we need to honestly answer, do we believe in the reality of eternity? And if we believe in the reality of eternity, how far are you willing to go to share the gospel? You see, God is calling us to go and to share the gospel with all people, with whoever, so that they have the chance to believe. This is not a one and done kind of thing. God wants us to live our lives where we are going out constantly telling people about the hope that resides in our lives, that to share the peace that we receive from God, to talk about mercy and grace and forgiveness. Because that's what Jesus came to offer. And the truth is, some people are not willing to receive that yet. But that doesn't mean that we don't continue to work the ground. We don't continue to toil in the soil. That doesn't mean that we just give up on people. I know it's hard, and I know it's difficult. But if we really and truly believe in the reality of heaven and the reality of hell, if we refuse to tell people about Jesus, how hateful do we have to be? You see, you can't fulfill the command to go out and to love all people. You can't love your neighbor as yourself if you refuse to tell them about the grace and the mercy of God. I hope that you have a wonderful conversation around the table this morning, that the bread and the cup reminds you of the mercy and the grace that God extends to you, but more importantly, it reminds you of the grace that God extends to everyone. So let's go out and tell that story. It's a story worth telling. I hope you have a great week, that you know you're loved, and that you go in peace. I'll see you soon.